We're back on that monthly build series grind, and as promised in my recent Radeon VII revisit, today we'll be building our first all AMD system in quite a while. The last time we went all Team Red was for an entry-level video editing machine with a Ryzen 5 2600 and an RX 580. This time around, we're stepping up the power level significantly to bring you a serious gaming machine with no compromises. Dude, I can't wait to get my hands on this thing. I've been waiting for so long.
That's what she said.
Did you really have to wear those glasses?
Yeah, dude, I needed a disguise too.
Jeez. Oh, dude, I got it. Computex is right around the corner, and in Taiwan, I fully expect that we'll be introduced to the Ryzen 3000 series of processors using Zen 2 architecture. With those new chips, AMD will likely have higher clock speeds and potentially more cores, so that's certainly something to get excited about. But until the time when you can actually buy one, this is AMD's best mainstream offering, the 2700X. For under $300, you get 8 unlocked and overclockable cores and 16 threads to play around with, along with improved memory support and higher clock speeds than first-gen Ryzen products. Although empirically, Intel's direct competitor is more powerful, as the 9900K has better IPC performance and higher clock speeds, it's also almost a full $200 more expensive. It consumes more power and it runs hotter. Not to mention that when you're gaming at higher resolutions like 1440p and 4K, the 2700X and the 9900K will start to look very much like the same product, as the limiting factor in your system is likely to be the GPU instead of the CPU. I wanted to use a motherboard for this build that I haven't used yet, and that was the BioStar X470 GT8. But in initial testing, even with an updated BIOS, that board had garbage memory compatibility, so I swapped it out for one of my favorite AM4 boards, the Asus ROG Strix X470F Gaming. I've used this once before in a build and had no problems at all with it. It has good overclocking support, I've never had a memory compatibility issue with it, and it looks great to boot. Now speaking of memory, G.skill's super bling-tastic Trident Z Royal will work great here for our needs. This is the silver 2x8GB kit of DDR4 3200, and given G.skill's excellent track record of working well with AMD systems, I expect full well that we'll be able to run this kit at its rated speed without any problems. While the mirrored heat spreader and the crystal top may turn off some more conservative or traditional system builders, I don't apologize for loving it, and I have a full bank of 8 of these in my daily driver system. For our CPU cooler, we'll be using Corsair's H115i Platinum, a 280mm AIO that uses quiet ML or magnetic levitation fans, along with a redesigned pump and pump top. Using a 280mm cooler will allow us to hopefully reach a nice overclock on the 2700X while also staying cool, so we'll be targeting 4.1 or 4.2 GHz if possible. Our GPU, as stated before, will be an AMD product, and since we're going all out here, let's run with their most powerful offering on the market today, the 16 gigs of HBM2 monster, the Radeon VII. While initial reviews of this were harsh, I recently did a revisit where I was able to get some fairly significant overclocks out of it, whereas I couldn't do that at first. And for the most part, when overclocked, it kept up with an RTX 2080. It's still certainly not the most popular card out there, but for those of you looking for a high-end option without any hints of green, this is definitely the way to go. Storing our data in this build will be the Western Digital Blue 1TB SSD. Now, when it comes to storage, these days prices are dropping so rapidly that consumers have a huge amount of really good 1TB and above choices, starting at even or maybe around $100. So pick what fits your storage needs if you're going to be playing along at home. The WD Blue SSD has been a workhorse for me, and I personally use one of them on my test bench, so it sees significant uptime and has never failed me. This EVGA 650G3 power supply should be perfect for a build like this, and although Radeon VII does consume quite a bit of juice, the Ryzen 2700X is fairly efficient, and I don't expect our total system draw to exceed 400 watts at any point. We'll be building in the new Deepcool Matrix 70 case, a relatively compact ATX mid-tower with some interesting features. It lists support for up to eATX motherboards, although we won't be testing that out today. It has a tempered glass power supply shroud, which is a first for me, a button release front panel, super convenient removable radiator mounts, a vertical GPU mounting option, and more for only 70 bucks. I am a bit concerned about the front panel airflow situation, but I do have a solution in mind there as well. I was just gonna roll with 3 regular RGB fans, but figured why not take this opportunity to try out Cooler Master's new Master Fan series. And I'm legit excited that a company figured out how to combine 3 fans into 1 unit to reduce not only installation headaches, but also wire clutter. And the SF360R ARGB does exactly that. There's only 2 cables that come off of here. The biggest concern with something like this is that now you have 3 failure points in 1 unit, so if 1 fan dies, you have to replace the entire thing instead of just 1 fan, but the SF360 is rated for 160,000 hours mean time to failure, so hopefully that's not an issue. I also have some single units to populate the rest of the case with, so those are in my office. I'm gonna go get them, and with all that out of the way, let's get to building and testing this beast and seeing what an all AMD system can really do. While the final system came out looking good and performing like a champ, the build process in the Matrix 70 was just a little challenging. Because this is a fairly inexpensive enclosure, Deepcool has chosen to omit a few things, like rubber grommets, which really polish off a clean interior look. Also, there's no dedicated space to route your PCIe power cabling, so you either have to run it through the off-center cutout for the front panel wiring, or from back behind the motherboard tray. This isn't a huge deal, and I've seen this choice made before, but I think I'd prefer a better solution here, especially since cable management room around back was just a little cramped. Not a lot, just a little.
Hey guys, I'm editing this video here, realized that I forgot to mention something really quick about the build process. Now the case technically does support 280mm radiators, however there's not a lot of height clearance above the motherboard tray, so when you combine the thickness of the fans plus the radiator, it was actually interfering with the top VRM heatsink on the motherboard. So what I had to do to make it fit was actually shift the entire assembly over towards the tempered glass side panel and drill my own holes through the top steel in order to get different mounting points to make that radiator fit. To be honest, it fits now and it still looks really good, and it was only a shift of a couple millimeters at most, and now it's not contacting the heatsink, so I guess it works. Although just be aware, if you're going to be doing something like this, that you're going to have to worry about that height clearance above your heatsinks if you have a motherboard that has fairly significant cooling on the VRMs.
When it came to gaming, our all AMD system really churned out some impressive numbers. And oddly, the benchmark results were higher in some tests than when I ran the Radeon VII with the 9700K. A system like this will slay games at 1440p and even some at 4K, although the interior of the build was running fairly warm, and even with an undervolt applied to the GPU, the fans really did crank up and were audible during heavy load. With that being said though, the 2700X ran perfectly stable at 4.1 GHz all day with the H115i Platinum cooling it, and I probably could have pushed a little higher if I was more aggressive with voltage. The GPU was also overclocked, plus 175 on the core with the memory running at 1200 MHz. I'll overlay the operating temps on screen now so you can check them out for yourself. Keep in mind, when I did my original temperature testing, actually I hadn't yet overclocked the GPU, but temps honestly didn't change very much. The fans just kind of ramped up instead to compensate. Even with 3 front fans and 3 exhausts, temps for both the 2700X and the Radeon VII were a little higher than I wanted to see them. I didn't see any throttling from either of them, but the fans throughout were running harder than they probably should have needed to, and especially since we had 6 of them in here. With the system at full load, it got pretty loud. Overall, the build went well, I'll say. The Matrix 70 was a budget enclosure with some interesting features, but instead of allocating a significant portion of the $70 MSRP to more and more tempered glass, I would have probably rather seen just a bit more engineering work put into front panel airflow to improve those temperatures just a little bit. When you look at comparables like the Fantex P300 and 350X and the NZXT H500, which are the same price or cheaper, the Matrix 70 starts to look a little weak. The hardware inside, however, was really stellar, and I really liked the 3-in-1 fan unit that we used up front. So that's it for April's monthly build. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of our system and how you might configure one using all Team Red components. Coming up on the channel, we'll be kicking off a new water cooling project, which we haven't done in a while, in partnership with EK, Fractal Design, and Corsair. So get subscribed if you don't want to miss that content. And also, there might be a giveaway happening very soon, so keep those eyes peeled. As always, guys, if you want to help support the channel directly, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, or you can visit the merchandise store. Link down below. You could pick up this t-shirt or a whole bunch of other ones. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.